Hello, folks. Welcome to the Hour of the Time, the only hour that ever was or ever will be. This is the most important hour in your life. For during this hour, you're going to decide your future and thus our collective futures worldwide. I'm your host, William Cooper, and tonight I am angry. Freedom worldwide has suffered a blow in the last few days. I'm not going to mention any names other than one, Randy Weaver. I'm not going to talk about dates because they're unimportant. And I'm not going to even tell you what state this took place in. All of those things have been hashed and rehashed on other programs. I have obtained the sequence of events in the order that they happened, and the facts as I know them, from members of the Citizens Agency for Joint Intelligence who were on the scene or near the scene at the time, and from listening to the reports made on the Chuck Harder's For the People show and Tom Valentine's Radio Free America. Again, this has been hashed and rehashed on other shows, but I think many pertinent facts regarding the consequences of what happened and the reasons why these things happened have not even begun to be touched upon. By the time you hear this broadcast on WWCR Worldwide, the events would have ended approximately 2 weeks ago, but this episode of the Hour of the Time was actually taped around midnight on September the 2nd from many hours of telephone conversations, from the notes that I took while listening to accounts of the events on the radio shows that I have mentioned. I have in front of me the Arizona Republic, a story which was printed on page 2, a little bitty story as if nothing happened of any consequence. And I have notes on the coverage that was done by ABC, NBC, and CBS when it was done, and in as little sound bites as they gave it. And most of that reporting, I have to tell you, was chock full of either sloppy, incompetent reporting or intentional lies. I don't know which. But this is serious, folks, and I am angry, I am outraged, I am irate. In fact, I'm having a hard time looking at all of this and understanding what happened. I'm having a hard time keeping my temper in check. So if I seem to get a little boisterous during this hour, I hope you will understand. And I think if you are the type of people that I think you are who are listening to this broadcast, you are going to be just as irate and just as angry and just as outraged as I and many others. Randy Weaver was a man who wanted to get away from all the corruption and the ills and the crud in this world. And he went to the mountains and tried to live a completely self-sufficient life. Somewhere in the process of doing this, Randy Weaver came in possession of a shotgun. And he sold this shotgun, and I believe from the reports that I have, he sold it to a government agent who was soliciting the sale of a weapon, which in my estimation makes him just as guilty as Randy Weaver. But what's wrong with a man selling a shotgun that he owns? Well, really, constitutionally, nothing. And we're going to talk about that during this hour, what it means to us and what it means to the Constitution and the ideals and principles upon which this country was founded, and what it means for our future. You see, in the eyes of the law, this shotgun was illegal because from all that I've been able to gather, from talking to many people, the shotgun was a little less than 1/4 inch short of the legal barrel length for a shotgun. Now, I hope you understand this, folks, because a whole bunch of people died for less than 1/4 of an inch. Let that sink in a little bit. A whole bunch of people died. Some were murdered, in my estimation. Assassinated. For less than 1/4 of an inch. The only crime was that this barrel of this shotgun was not 1/4 of an inch longer than it was. And it was sold to a government agent. Now, if that shotgun barrel had been 1/4 of an inch longer and was sold to that same agent, no crime would have been committed. But was it a crime? Was it really a crime, or have those who want to destroy this country passed into law unconstitutional legislation governing firearms? Well, let's see. I have the Constitution right here in my hands, folks, and we're going to read it. We're going to talk about it. We're going to go through it until we understand it backward and forward. And I'm going to make sure that you do, folks, because I understand it perfectly clear. There's no misunderstanding on this end. You see, our forefathers understood that a people without the means to defend themselves could be enslaved by their own government. And the reason that they gave us the second article and amendment to the Constitution was not so that we could go hunting. It was not so that we could walk around with a gun on our hip and feel big. It wasn't even to protect us from robbers and murderers and thugs, although that is absolutely legal to do that. It wasn't even to protect our property, although firearms have come in handy at times to do that also. Our forefathers gave us the second article and amendment to the Constitution of the United States of America so that we could stay free, so that our government could never become oppressive and enslave the people of the United States of America, so that no despot could rise to power in this country and take away our freedoms. And you may say, well, this is the modern age, that could never happen. I say, if you believe that, you're not playing with a full deck of cards. You're trying to row a boat with only one oar in the water, and that one oar is questionable. You're spinning your wheels, you're going around in the circle, you've lost your mind. All you have to do is look around in this world, and most of you can look at your own family and see that in your own family there's people you wouldn't trust to lead this country. And you think those people couldn't rise to power? Look through history, and you'll see how easy it is for a despot to rise to power, and how easy it is to enslave a people who have no means to defend themselves. Let me read to you the second article and amendment to the Constitution of the United States of America, for those of you who don't know what it says or don't own a Constitution, and think you know, but really don't. It says, and I quote, "A well-regulated militia, being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed," unquote. Now, let's define some words here so that you'll understand what these words mean. Militia. Militia in the unabridged, real thick, the real huge big dictionary, Webster's. Militia is defined as all boys and men between the ages of 18 and 45 who have a rifle and 100 rounds of ammunition. All men and boys. It doesn't say some. It doesn't say men and boys in the National Guard. It says all men and boys between the ages of 18 and 45 who have a rifle and 100 rounds of ammunition. The United States Senate, and you can check, this has been entered, I believe, in 1978 in the Congressional Record. made a determination as to the meaning of militia as it applies to the Constitution and to the United States of America. The United States Senate says that the definition of militia is a universally armed people. They specifically stated in their determination that the militia is not the National Guard or the Army or the Navy or the Marines or the Air Force or the Coast Guard, and specifically made a point that it is not the National Guard. The militia is a universally armed people. And that is exactly what our forefathers intended the militia to be. A free state, when the Constitution was written, did not apply to the federal government with its seat of power in the geographical area known as Washington, D.C. A free state, as defined here, is each of the states which make up together the United States of America, a union formed for their mutual benefit and protection. Now, I know a lot of you didn't know this, but that's exactly what it means. Quote, a well-regulated militia, being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. The important and the clause that applies is the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. And that means exactly what it says. Our forefathers were very clear in all of their writings about what this means. And what it means is no one has a right to pass any laws, regulations, or restrictions on any type of arms whatsoever regarding the right of the people to have them. Because it is the only thing in the entire world that has kept us free to this date. And I'm going to tell you right now, throughout history, whenever any people have been disarmed, they have been enslaved shortly thereafter. Throughout history, when any despot or king or conqueror wished to enslave a people, the first thing that they did was take their arms from them. You see a concerted effort in this country now, today, to do exactly that. Because in the New World Order, that's what you're going to be, slaves. In the Congress right now, at this moment, is a bill, H.J. 438. That bill has been introduced to repeal the second article and amendment to the Constitution, the right to keep and bear arms. Didn't know that, did you? Well, you know it now, and you better do something about it. We had all better do something about it. You see, before the Constitution of the United States of America was created by our forefathers, up on the cornerstone, the foundation block of the Declaration of Independence, and then the 10 amendments, known as the Bill of Rights, were added. No people in the history of the world had ever been free, period. It was the first time in the history of the world that a citizen of a state, of any state, and in this instance the United States of America, was a sovereign king in his own right, and for the first time in the history of the world, the government became the chattel servant. Well, how does all this apply to Randy Weaver? Randy Weaver was exercising his right to keep and bear arms and to sell a piece of his property. And it's questionable whether he would have sold that piece of property had he not been solicited to sell it by a government agent who was intentionally trying to entrap him. Now, that's according to all the information I've been able to gather. It seems that Randy Weaver and his son and a friend and his 3 daughters and his wife were in their cabin in the mountain one day. when they heard their dogs barking and yapping and baying as if they were on the trail of an animal of some kind. Well, they did what mountain people do, country people do, when you have to put food on the table. They grabbed their rifles and they ran out the door after the dogs, hoping that it was a deer or an elk or an antelope or something, according to the testimony on the radio of Officer Jack McLam, whom I know, and I know him to be truthful. And they set off to try to put some meat in the larder. The dogs evidently were on to trespassers, is what I call them. Federal marshals who were trespassing on this land illegally set up an ambush in the bushes in camouflage clothing, not in uniform, with no badges, and these people didn't know who they were. They ran after the dogs, and all of a sudden one of these camouflage-dressed stormtroopers stood up in the bushes and began to shoot and kill the dogs. Randy Weaver's son yelled out, "Hey, you're killing my dog," and fired a couple of shots in that direction. Randy Weaver, I understood, fired a warning shot possibly sometime later. The exact sequence of these events I don't think is really known to anyone completely yet, except Randy Weaver and his friend. It's questionable whether his friend will live. Their friend saw Randy Weaver's son shot in the shoulder and turned and began to run back toward the cabin. He began to fire at the man in the bushes, who then opened fire again and hit Randy Weaver's son in the back as he was running to the cabin, shot him in the back. And the American people traditionally have considered that to be unacceptable. 14-year-old boy, shot first in the shoulder, then as he turned and ran toward his cabin for safety, was shot in the back and dropped dead on the ground. His friend bent down and checked his pulse and determined that he was dead. Stood up and fired back at these people. He didn't know who they were. They probably all thought that they were a pack of bandits there to kill them. And he killed the federal marshal. Randy Weaver, at this time, began to run toward the direction of the firing and toward the cabin. And when he got there, his friend told him that his son was dead. They went down and got the body and wrapped the body up and placed it in one of the sheds, I believe. And later they wanted to go down and pray over the body, and he wanted to grieve over his son. And by that time they were surrounded by well over, some estimates say as high as 500 federal agents, with tanks, armored personnel carriers, and helicopters. Folks, what happened here is despicable. Absolutely despicable. It is the most terrible thing that I have ever witnessed happen in this country in my entire life. Remember, I said in this country. These things are not supposed to happen in the United States of America. But me and many other people have been warning you that exactly what happened to Randy Weaver was going to happen, and I'm telling you right now, it will happen again and again and again, and these kinds of incidents will escalate as we head into the New World Order unless we stop it dead in its tracks now. Well, at this point, he's grieving, or trying to grieve, over his dead son's body, and this army opens up on him, firing at him and his friend again. Randy Weaver is wounded. As they run into the cabin, his wife, Vicky, heard the shots. As they ran into the cabin, his friend was wounded. And his wife, holding an 8-month-old baby girl in her arms, a woman who has committed no crime. Her son, who is now dead, has committed no crime. She's holding the only weapon that most women ever have, her 8-month-old daughter, a baby, in her arms. And at that moment, a brave law enforcement official, a scumbag with a sniper rifle, a person who claims to be an American and claims to understand the Constitution and is sworn to uphold and defend the Constitution, shoots this woman who has committed no crime, is holding no weapon, has only her baby in her arms. This sniper, this scumbag, this traitor, shoots her in the head and kills her instantly. She falls to the floor, still holding the baby in her arms. This is extremely difficult for me to get through because the tears well up in my eyes. The emotion rushes up into my chest, and I have to really strain to control myself because I am outraged. I am so angry I can barely contain it. Now we have an 8-month-old baby girl, 2 other daughters, the dead mother, the dead son, and 2 wounded men in this cabin. And they're in that cabin, boarded up, with no fresh air, no relief, no food, no fresh water, no nothing, for another week. And this army knows that they have killed his wife and never said a word about it to anyone. At one point, witnesses who called me claimed that they saw a helicopter carrying what looked like a pod of napalm or fuel underneath the helicopter, which they were preparing to drop on Randy Weaver's home and incinerate, destroy the whole family. Why in the world would they do that? For less than a quarter of an inch of a shotgun barrel. What is at play here, folks? Well, I know what is at play, and before this program is over, I'm going to tell you exactly what it is. But I want you to understand something. If we as a people universally do not rise up against this and ensure that the buns and the creeps and the cruds who are supposed to be representing us in our government are thrown out, fired, and the bureaucracy is turned over completely and thinned out. If we don't take back our nation, then I'll tell you right now, this incident will spell the end of the United States of America as we have known it, as our forefathers intended it. Will destroy the ideals and principles upon which this nation was founded, and never more will any people in this world be free. That's how serious this is. That is how serious this is. I think the only thing that kept millions of people from grabbing their firearm and rushing to the scene to help Randy Weaver defend his family against these scumbags according to my reports, and according to what Officer Jack McLam said on the Tom Valentine show, on the 2nd of September, 1992. The phone was being carried up to the door on a robot. They even had a robot out there, folks. And there was the phone of the robot in the hand of the robot, if a robot has a hand. This is what was described to me. And behind the phone was a shotgun. Now, I don't know if Paul Harvey knew that or not, but Paul Harvey had no business doing what he had done. And if Randy Weaver had reached out and picked up that phone, that shotgun would have blown his arm off. Well, eventually, someone went up and talked Randy Weaver into coming out. And I'm not going to tell you who it was because I believe that this person did it for political purposes, and I know this person, and I don't like him. And I'll tell you why in another program. But you see, Randy Weaver had written to this political figure and had asked him to come and help him because he had reason to believe that the government was going to massacre his family. This was weeks before it happened, folks. Well, this man didn't think it was important enough to go and help Randy Weaver save his family, but when all the TV cameras and the reporters were on the scene, this man was right there lickety-split. But that's his story is for another program, and I guarantee you I have a barrel of information for you about that man. But this program is about Randy Weaver, about the Constitution, about what this means for all of us. At this point, I have to break and tell you that if you want to keep this program on the air, you need to become a member of the Citizens Agency for Joint Intelligence. You can do that by sending $25 to CAJI, C-A-J-I, the Citizens Agency for Joint Intelligence, in care of the Becker Satellite Network, Kiowa, Kansas, 67070. That's $25 to the Citizens Agency for Joint Intelligence, CAJI, C-A-J-I, in care of the Becker Satellite Network.
Remember, folks, this is a rerun that is over 5 years old. Please disregard all special offers, prices, addresses, and phone numbers. None of them apply. Just listen to the information and the history in this broadcast, and the second hour also.
My book, Behold a Pale Horse. That's Behold a Pale Horse. 500 pages of the most well-documented suppressed information ever printed in the history of the world. I've been told that by experts who know. It outlines the entire plan for the New World Order, everything that happened with Randy Weaver and what's coming in the future, and an explanation for the destruction of the economy of this country and everything else is in that book. If you don't have a copy, you're going to be crippled in the coming years. Behold a Pale Horse. $24. That includes postage and handling. Make your check or money order out to William Cooper, and that goes for CAJI too. Make them out to William Cooper and send it to the Becker Satellite Network, Kiowa, Kansas, 67070. The Becker Satellite Network, Kiowa, Kansas, 67070. This program would not be possible without the help of Scott and Chris Becker of the Becker Satellite Network, the only truly alternative satellite radio. You can hear this show every Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday night on the Becker Satellite Network at 9 p.m. Central Standard Time, SpaceNet 2, Channel 7.5 audio. Can't happen in America, you say? I say that you've been asleep for too long. You are wandering around inside the gates of Disneyland and the park is closed, folks. Your e-ticket is expired. You've got to go outside the gate and look at reality. Can't happen in America, you say? It already is, folks. It's already happening. the incident with Randy Weaver is just the worst incident so far. But it's not the worst in tragedy and harm and emotional injury and the loss of property that many Americans have suffered. You see, because we've already lost approximately half of the Bill of Rights, and I can go down and name and enumerate each single right that we've lost. One of the most serious is the loss of the fourth article and amendment to the Constitution. Let me enlighten you. Amendment 4 to the Constitution of the United States of America says, and I quote, "The right of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures shall not be violated, and no warrants shall issue, but upon probable cause, supported by oath or affirmation, and particularly describing the place to be searched and the persons or things to be seized." Unquote. Now, I don't know if you know it or not, but all across this country, doors are being broken down. People are being searched. Beautiful homes are being trashed. Contractors have told me that after they go in and search a home, the home is not even worth scrap. Usually it has to be bulldozed and rebuilt. Property is being seized. Bank accounts are being seized. RVs and trailers and boats and cars and mountain cabins and property and land are being seized. With no due process, with no search warrants, without even charges being filed against these people in many instances. Now, there are many things wrong with this. I just read you Amendment 4, which says that cannot be done. There are other articles in the Constitution which say, and I quote, this is in Amendment 5, "Nor shall private property be taken for public use without just compensation." Let me read that whole amendment for you, Amendment 5. "No person shall be held to answer for a capital or otherwise infamous crime unless on a presentment or indictment of a grand jury, except in cases arising in the land or naval forces or in the militia, when in actual service in time of war or public danger. Nor shall any person be subject for the same offense to be twice put in jeopardy of life or limb, nor shall be compelled in any criminal case to be a witness against himself, nor be deprived of life, liberty, or property." Let me say that again. "Nor be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of law. Nor shall private property be taken for public use without just compensation." So Amendment 4 is gone. Amendment 5 is gone. You've heard of the Fifth Amendment part, but you didn't know about "shall not be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of law," and it's happening all over this country. But the Fifth Amendment is gone too, folks, because the Supreme Court has ruled that if you are taken by the police and beaten, and a confession is obtained from this beating, it is allowed to stand in court. It cannot be thrown out. In other words, now you can be tortured and made to confess. And I got to tell you, I don't care who you are. If somebody beats you long enough, you're going to tell them whatever they want to hear, and you're going to sign whatever they want you to sign. So the Fourth and Fifth Amendments are gone. The Second Amendment has been severely curtailed, and as I told you, H.J. 438 is in Congress now to repeal the Second Amendment. The First Amendment, "Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion, or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech or of the press, or of the right of the people peaceably to assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances." In many areas of the country, it is forbidden for people to assemble and protest. "Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion." That was put in there by our forefathers so that there could be no state religion. The other part is, "Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof." Prohibiting prayer in schools is a violation of the first article and amendment. It is very plain. There is nothing in there about separation of church and state, period. It prohibits the government from establishing a state religion, and it prohibits the government from prohibiting the free exercise of religion. Now, I can go on and on and on. You see, most Americans don't know anything about any of this, because most Americans don't have a copy of the Constitution. They haven't read it. They don't understand it. They haven't read the Federalist Papers. They haven't read the letters and the private papers and the writings of our forefathers. They don't even understand what this country is all about. This nation resides in only one place. This nation is the Constitution of the United States of America and the articles and amendment thereof. You change this document, and you change this country forever. You tear up or destroy this document or shred it like Ollie North did, and you destroy this country forever. Gone. It will not exist anymore. The American people had better wake up, and they had better wake up very, very quickly. And don't pay attention to these people who would have you believe that our form of government doesn't work, that constitutional government has failed. It has not failed. It has not been allowed to work. It has been subverted from within. And I've just given you several examples of how that has happened. You see, constitutional government cannot fail. Our Constitution can't fail to work unless it is subverted and destroyed from within like a cancer eating on a human body. Because it is a living Constitution and provides for the people to adjust or change or add or subtract from it as the need arises. But this is not what you are being told, and the changes that are being brought upon the Constitution are willful ignoring of its clauses, articles, terms, conditions. It is the supreme law of the land, and it's being intentionally, willfully ignored, destroyed. It has not been changed by the people. Indeed, the people have expressed their desire that they do not want any changes to the Constitution of the United States of America. This Constitution is the most brilliant document ever penned from the minds of men. And since it is a living Constitution, it can go on as the supreme law of the land forever. And as the need arises and the people recognize that need, we can alter it, amend it, change it, but only according to the will of the people and the terms spelled out in the Constitution itself, outlining the specific procedure to be followed to accomplish such amendment or changes to our Constitution. Ladies and gentlemen, what has happened with Randy Weaver and his family is just an extension of what has been happening all along. It was a carefully planned and executed operation to create an incident to inflame the anti-gun lobby to rise up to call for the abolition of the second article and amendment to the Constitution. But it backfired on them. It didn't work, you see. They didn't get away with it. They didn't get away with it. And since Randy Weaver and his friend are alive, and I hope his friend survives, and his daughters are still alive to testify, to tell the world what happened, it may have really put a serious wrench in their plans. The display of force was unprecedented to capture one man who was guilty of selling a federal agent 1/4 inch, not enough barrel on a shotgun. A federal marshal died. A young 14-year-old boy was murdered. His mother was murdered as she held her 8-month-old baby in her arms. Randy Weaver and his friend were wounded. And 3 little girls will be scarred for the rest of their life with the memories of this. And if they ever recover psychologically, it will be a miracle. All for less than 1/4 of an inch of a shotgun barrel. So much for freedom. Welcome to the police state of the New World Order. And it's going to get worse unless we stop it. The show of force was unprecedented, ladies and gentlemen, because they are beginning the reign of terror. It was an act of terrorism to furnish an example for the rest of us that we cannot fight the New World Order, that we must buckle under, that we must submit to the slavery that's coming. And I, for one, will not do it. Randy Weaver did not do it. I will not do it. And if this ever happens to me, folks, just remember, I'm not a white supremacist. I have been trying for years to convince the different races and different peoples that we are not each other's enemies. The Jew is not our enemy. They're just people like we are, trying to get along in this world, and they have been persecuted long enough. The blacks are not our enemies. They too are struggling to try to reach some stabilized measure of happiness in this world. The Asians, they're people just like us. Everybody basically has one concern. How can I feed my family? How can we have a modicum of comfort? And how can we live in peace? The whites are not the enemies of everyone else. Neither are the American Indians or any other race that you can think of. But those who are attempting to bring about total control of each and every human being on every 24 hours of their life forever are the ones who engineer these incidents, and these racial incidents, and these Randy Weaver incidents, and the incidents in South Central LA. So that while we're fighting each other, they can enslave us all. And when you hear that I am a white supremacist and a Nazi and an anti-Semite and all that stuff, just pick up a copy of my book, Behold a Pale Horse, and read it. Read my own words. Get copies of my lectures for years past, and you will see that I am not any of those things, and indeed cannot be, for my wife is Chinese. You're going to hear those labels. You're going to begin to hear those labels applied to me and many other patriots, because patriotism is not going to be allowed in the New World Order. It will be termed a mental illness. I'm also part American Indian. So much for the racism and all of the other crap. I am an American. I believe in the Constitution of the United States of America and in the Bill of Rights as the only document in the history of the world that has truly set men free and is worthy of preservation and must be restored as the supreme law of this land. And if it is not, we are going to pay a price that no one can imagine, and that no one is going to be happy with. Between somewhere, depending upon who I talked to, or who I listened to, or who was talking on the radio, or who was calling me on the telephone, somewhere between 200 and 500 federal agents with the intent to massacre an entire family, with tanks and armored personnel carriers and helicopters and snipers, men with no conscience, no morals, no concept of what this country is all about, men who will do whatever they're ordered to whenever they're ordered to, no matter how right or wrong it is, for a few measly, worthless Federal Reserve notes and a monthly paycheck. We are in serious trouble. The Constitution is in danger, and I've been attempting for years to warn the American people, and you must wake up. Because if we don't do something about this, these incidents will escalate, and this will mark the point in the history of the world where freedom was destroyed. It will mark the point in history where the Constitution became nothing but a piece of paper in a glass case. If it is allowed to stay in that glass case, I doubt if it will. Folks, I care. I care about that 14-year-old boy, and I care about Randy Weaver's wife, Vicki, and I care about those 3 little girls and about Randy Weaver and his friend. And I would never, if I was in charge, have allowed anyone to harm anyone else ever over less than 1/4 of an inch of the barrel of a shotgun, which was not used to hurt anyone. It's time to wake up, America. This is your wake-up call, and it may be the last one you ever get, although I'm going to continue broadcasting as long as anyone lets me. And I'm going to continue your education about our Constitution and the ideals and principles upon which this country was founded, and about freedom, and about what is going on in this country, and about how we can save the Constitution. I love this country, and I love the Constitution and the Bill of Rights, and all of you listening, more than I could ever express with words. It is beyond my ability to convey. Well, here we are with part 2 of the Randy Weaver episode. I've heard comments on the radio, on the press, and television, and newspaper articles that Randy Weaver was a right-wing radical, that he was a Nazi, that he was a white Aryan supremacist, all kinds of things. I've heard, oh, well, never mind about all that I've heard, but what I've heard didn't make sense at all when people know the facts. But the problem is that people make those statements and they don't know the facts. And many of the statements made in the media were intentionally made to attempt to discredit Randy Weaver and make it look like the government was justified in what they did. And tonight's show, I hope to be able to clear the air on this so that you will know what the real facts are. Number 1, I can see that I'm going to have to educate an awful lot of people as to what right and left mean and what Nazi means. Because a lot of people don't seem to understand what those terms mean. You see, you can't have a scale that measures degrees of anything if you put the same degree at both ends of the scale. In other words, what you've got, the way I hear people talking, is total control on one end called Nazis and total control on the other end called communism. And it just ain't that way, folks. That's not the way the scale works. And you're going to be surprised by what you're going to hear right now. Because you've been so indoctrinated by the brainwashing of the television and members of the Council on Foreign Relations like Dan Rather and others who corrupt your thinking because you don't go look it up yourselves, that it makes conversations like this necessary, unfortunately. We have a line that measures degrees of control, folks. On one end is called the left, and the other end is called the right. Now, everybody that I hear all the time saying that right-wing extremists are Nazis, fascists, you guys have lost it. You don't know what you're talking about. In fact, you better stop it right now, or people who listen to this broadcast are going to know that you're nothing but an airhead. Nothing but an airhead. You see, all the way on the left, you have communism, and that's total control. Total control of everything. People, goods, marketplaces, factories, food supplies, everything. Everything is owned and operated by the state, and supposedly, each is supposed to contribute according to his talents, and each is supposed to receive according to his need, but it never works that way. Never works that way. And the Soviet Union was a great example of communism. Every time communism has ever been attempted in the world, it has failed miserably. Miserably. One of the biggest problems with it is the people pretend to work and the state pretends to pay them, so nobody does much of anything. And nobody has to be responsible because the state is responsible for everything. Right next to communism, folks, is what's called socialism. In a socialist state, you have a little less control over everything and everybody, and the private individual can own capital goods. But the state tells him how many units he can manufacture with his capital goods, how much to charge for them, what markets he can sell them in, and how many units he can produce. All of these things. The individual gets benefits from the state because the state usually takes care of just about everything and make sure that nobody goes without. I've heard socialists say that in the perfect socialist society, no one could starve to death. They couldn't even go on a hunger strike because somebody would tie them down and pour the food down their throat because it's just not allowed to go hungry in a socialist state. A lot of you are going to be surprised to hear this, but I have heard people calling Nazis right-wing radicals. And that is so far from the truth that it is pathetic. And there are so many people who have this misconception, that it makes me wonder if there are any people in this country left who can think for themselves. Because I'm going to give it to you straight right now, folks. And all you little socialists out there, hang your head in shame, because I have heard you calling the real right-wing people Nazis. And the truth is, if you're a socialist, you are the Nazi. You are. No one else. Nazi stands for Nazi National Socialism. That's what it means. Nazi means National Socialism. Hitler was a socialist, and Nazi Germany was a socialist country. Socialism always eventually results in total control of almost everything, and usually in the form of a dictator, but not always. Socialists do not have rights or freedoms. Socialists pay huge sums in taxes because the state has to get the money from the people to turn around and give the people all the benefits that they have to have under socialism. Sorry, guys, I can hear you crying out there, but it's true. If you're a socialist, if that's what you want, then you're the Nazi. You are. So stop calling everybody else a Nazi. Right next to socialism, just another notch up, is what you call true democracy. And all you Americans out there who think you know what democracy is, and you think this country's a democracy, in a couple of minutes you're going to be crying too. Because it ain't so. Democracy, true democracy, is ruled by the mob. You got a whole bunch of people, one man, one vote. That's right out of the Karl Marx's Communist Manifesto. One man, one vote. The problem with that, folks, is if you are not just like all the other people who are voting, they're liable to vote that they hang you. If you don't look like them, they're liable to vote you into exile. If you don't think like them or talk like them, they're liable to vote you into prison. And if they just plain don't like you, no matter what, they may not let you have any food. And the mob always votes themselves benefits until the democracy becomes socialism. Always. And I can see that happening in this country right now. Everybody wants everything, but nobody wants to give anything. And when it's necessary to bite the bullet to straighten this country out, nobody wants to do it. Nobody wants to do it. Yeah, everybody wants to cut back on military spending. We don't need all this Army, Air Force, Navy, Marines, and Coast Guard because there's no more Soviet Union. And we need to pay back the national debt. And we need to build up the economy. So let's cut back on the military and all of this kind of stuff. But when it comes down to closing the base in your town, what do you do? What do you do? You revert to socialism and you say, no, the government owes me this stuff, and if the base closes, I won't have all my benefits, and I won't have a job, and I might have to retrain and go get a job somewhere else. So the whole country suffers because of your selfishness and your unwillingness to bite the bullet. Somebody's got to bite it, folks. Somebody has to bite the bullet. But you're not going to let it be you, are you? Well, somewhere one notch up from democracy is a republic. And that's what this country is, folks. It's a republic. A republic is probably the best form of government ever created in this world. This republic has proven in the past to be the very best government that's ever been created in history until the people abdicated their responsibilities. For in a republic, you don't have this one man, one vote stuff. The mob can't oppress the weak or the minorities or the blacks or anybody else when it's working properly. You cast your vote and you elect a representative who is supposed to go and vote his conscience in the best interest of the country. And if you don't like what he did, you're stuck with it until his term is up or until he commits a crime and you have to impeach him. But if he doesn't commit a crime, then you're stuck with him until his term's up, and the remedy for not liking what he did is not re-electing him. But Americans, it seems, have forgotten that because they re-elect every one of these jerks that are supposed to be representing us, but lie to us constantly and are destroying this country from within. Most of them belong to secret societies whose aim is to destroy this country and create a one-world government. And they lie to you, and you forget about it, and you re-elect them, and they lie to you again, and you wonder, why is this guy lying to me? This is incredible, folks. It's incredible that we should be even having this conversation. One notch up from a republic is something like town meetings. Something like what happened early on in this country. There was no real powerful government, and every little town and county or sometimes colony had a town meeting. And everybody argued and fought until they figured out what they were going to do. At the very, very far right of this scale, folks, is no control at all, and that's just as bad as total control. It's anarchy. Anarchy is right-wing radical. Anarchy is where there are no laws, there is no government, there is no control whatsoever. It is rule of the strongest over the weakest. It means that if I want the shirt off your back, I can just rip it off your back, and if you're not strong enough to stop me, I got your shirt. It means if I want your house, all I got to do is walk in and shoot everybody in there, bury them in the backyard, and your house is mine. And I'm tired of hearing all this erroneous claptrap passed around as right wing and left wing, and calling conservatives Nazis and calling this country a democracy. I would like to know, folks, what have you done with the gray matter that God gave you that's supposed to be between your ears? What have you done with it? Because not too many people are using it. And I'm going to tell you what the people who are really in charge and are really bringing about this one world government think of us. Here is their philosophy. Quote, "A nation or world of people who will not use their intelligence are no better than animals who do not have intelligence. Such people are beasts of burden and stakes on the table by choice and consent." You want to know what's wrong with this country? You want to know why we're going down the tubes? Because some very smart, cunning, intelligent men who belong to secret societies have been able to infiltrate our government and military at all levels. And because we abdicated and we can't think for ourselves, and we don't want to be responsible, they've stolen our country right out from under us from within. It has not been the evil empire. We have not been invaded by any army. And until people wake up and begin to think for themselves and learn how to put 2 and 2 together and come up with 4 instead of 14 or 3, we don't stand a chance of getting our government back or our country back or saving the Constitution. Any other comments I've heard? Randy Weaver was a white Aryan racist. It's a lie, folks. It's a lie. Nobody really knows what Randy Weaver believes in but Randy Weaver. Because all of the statements released to the press came from the FBI. And the FBI had a vested interest in trying to make Randy Weaver look like an extreme, dangerous radical, when the truth is that Randy Weaver had only committed a misdemeanor. I heard people out there talking about he was a felon, a wanted felon. Folks, he committed a misdemeanor. He sold a shotgun to a federal agent that was a little less than 1/4 inch short of what a barrel is supposed to be, according to the law, which is unconstitutional if you understand the Constitution. And every time it's come up to the Supreme Court, they've refused to hear it. And they refuse to hear it because they know they will have to rule these gun laws unconstitutional. If you want to get rid of guns, if you want to put restrictions on guns, there's only one way to do it, folks. You must change the Constitution by amendment, because the Constitution in the second article in amendment states that the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. And all this argument about we don't need a militia because the National Guard is the militia is bunk. That's a lie also, because the militia, by the rule of the Senate, is a universally armed people. Our forefathers gave us the second article in amendment to protect us from our own government should it ever become oppressive or should a despot ever rise to power in this country. The dictionary definition of militia is every man and boy between the ages of 18 and 45 who have a rifle and 100 rounds of ammunition. What I'm seeing as I travel around this country, what I'm hearing on the radio are a bunch of ignorant idiots and who deserve to lose their country if they don't wake up and start thinking. And I'm not talking to everyone, of course. There are some pretty smart people out there. But not very many, unfortunately. There are not many out there who understand the Constitution or what this country's all about. There are not many out there who understand that when you tell somebody else to shut up and they can't talk because you don't like what their beliefs are, when you take away that person's freedom, you've also taken away your own freedom. And whoever's in charge can shut everybody up. You don't understand that. And the people who scream the loudest about this are the people who would scream the loudest if they were the ones who were shut up. The law must apply to all. All or none. Take your pick. All or none. There is no halfway in between. You see? Because if you can shut up a man who says that he doesn't want to live with blacks, then you can shut up a man who says that he wants to go to the synagogue on Saturday. Or you can shut up a man who wants to go to a Christian church. You can shut up a man who wants to protest. You can shut up a man who wants to make a speech to get elected to office. In fact, you can stop all elections. People have lost their roots in this country. It makes me very angry and very sad to hear all these things, because here's the truth of the matter about Randy Weaver, folks. You see, the Citizens Agency for Joint Intelligence has been in place and operating for several years now. We have members in police departments. We have members who are FBI agents. We have members at all levels of government. We have members who have infiltrated and are members of Freemasonry. We have members who are store clerks. We have members who are taxi drivers. We have members who are in the New Age movement. We have members everywhere. And this is the truth about what happened to Randy Weaver. See, Randy Weaver wasn't running from the law. What he did was a misdemeanor, and he was fully prepared to go to court. And a misdemeanor carries a maximum prison sentence of 1 year, or a fine, or both. Now, Randy Weaver probably would never have gone to prison. He probably would have been fined and let go. But the feds came to Randy Weaver, and here's what they told him. They said, Randy, we got you on these weapons charges here, and we're going to stick it to you unless you cooperate with us. And here's what we want you to do. We know you're not a racist, and we know you're not a member of the white supremacist group known as the Aryan Nations, but we want you to infiltrate the white supremacist Aryan Nation and report to us everything that happens, and we'll drop these charges against you or maybe just give you a token fine. Well, Randy Weaver, being the good man that he is, told them to go fish. Stick it where the sun don't shine. I'm not playing your game, and I'm not spying on my neighbors. This is not the Soviet Union. So they told Randy Weaver that if he didn't cooperate, they would destroy him and his entire family, and Randy Weaver headed for the hills with his family. Now that's what happened, folks. And all of you out there had better understand it. And what happened up in Utah was an attempt to carry out that threat. Now, Randy Weaver had written this all down and sent it to Bo Gritz. Bo Gritz read it on the air on several talk show programs and told the people listening what was happening with Randy Weaver, instead that he was going up there to help him, but he never did. He never went up there to help him. until his son was dead, and his wife was dead, and Randy and his friend were wounded, and his 3 little girls had been mentally scarred for life. And then Bobright shows up with all the TV cameras and the press and makes a grandstand bid for the presidency. And everybody starts calling Randy Weaver a white supremacist, member of the Aryan nation, Nazi. He was never a Nazi, and the Nazis that showed up there, he didn't even know those people. Now, he has been acquainted in his life with Nazis and liberals and white supremacists and Jews and Catholics and everybody, just as I have and just as you have, and most times you don't even know it, and you've probably got some friends now that if you really knew what they really believed, they wouldn't be your friends. You can't judge someone because they know someone else. Now, my understanding is that Randy Weaver may belong to a religion called Identity Christian. That's a possibility. I don't know. But he has a right to belong to that religion, just like you have the right to belong to the religion that you belong to. And he has a right to believe if he wants.
You're listening to a rerun of The Hour of the Time that originally aired on September 15th, 1992.
Up. With all the TV cameras and the press and makes a grandstand bid for the presidency. And everybody starts calling Randy Weaver a white supremacist, member of the Aryan nation, Nazi. He was never a Nazi, and the Nazis that showed up there, he didn't even know those people. Now, he has been acquainted in his life with Nazis and liberals and white supremacists and Jews and Catholics and everybody, just as I have and just as you have, and most times you don't even know it, and you've probably got some friends now that if you really knew what they really believed, they wouldn't be your friends. You can't judge someone because they know someone else. Now, my understanding is that Randy Weaver may belong to a religion called Identity Christian. That's a possibility. I don't know. But he has a right to belong to that religion, just like you have the right to belong to the religion that you belong to. And he has a right to believe, if he wants to, that the races should live separately. There's nothing wrong with him believing that. In this country, he has a right to. Now, I don't subscribe to that belief, and if I could, I would sit down and try to talk him out of that belief. If he really believes it, which none of us know. None of us. So until Randy Weaver gets a chance to tell his own story in a forum that you can trust to report accurately, and there aren't many like that, believe me, I suggest that you all stop labeling Randy Weaver and understand that what happened was this. A man committed a misdemeanor that is probably an unconstitutional law. He was ready and willing to go to court for that misdemeanor until the federal government made him a proposition that they would be lenient on him and probably give him a token fine or just let him go altogether if he would agree to infiltrate the white supremacist group known as the Aryan Nation and report to the federal government everything he heard and saw. And Randy Weaver said, "Stick it. I'm not going to spy on fellow Americans. This is not the Soviet Union." And he was still ready and willing to go to court. But they told him that if he did not agree to cooperate and keep his mouth shut about the deal that they had offered him, that they would destroy him and his whole family. Now, what would you do if that had happened to you? You see, because I think I would have done exactly what Randy Weaver did. I would have tried to protect myself and my family. I would have headed for the hills. You can't go to the law, can you? Because it's the law making the threat against you. And this is not the first time that it's ever happened. I would suggest you research the trial of the Mayflower Madam, Sidney Biddle Barrows, and look at the state's prime witness, the ex-employee of Sidney Biddle Barrows, the Mayflower Madam, who turned state's evidence and ratted on her and made a deal. And she was also given the same kind of terms. You either make this deal and do what we say, or we're going to put you away forever. What was the deal? She was to go to Los Angeles, where they gave her money, and she started a magazine so that they could feed her information to print in this magazine, and so that through this magazine they could keep tabs on the group of people who investigate the UFO phenomenon, and the name of the magazine is UFO Magazine. Investigate it yourself, folks. The government makes these deals all the time, and the result is that all of us suffer. Randy Weaver suffered. He lost his son, 14-year-old son, his wife. His 3 daughters will be mentally scarred forever, and if they recover, it will be a miracle. His friend is in critical condition in the hospital, and nobody knows whether he's really going to live or not. Randy Weaver will live, will probably stand trial for all kinds of trumped-up charges as the government tries to cover up what it did, unless we can exert enough pressure to make sure that Randy Weaver gets justice and that we all get justice. Because if this can happen to Randy Weaver, folks, it can happen to you tonight. If a college professor on the East Coast can be accused by one of his students as being a dope dealer because he gave the student a low grade, and without even charging him with any crime, without searching his house or him, confiscate his home, his car, his bank accounts, his vacation property, and all of his possessions, and auction them off with no court order, no due process of law, they can do it to you tomorrow. Let me tell you what they're doing in the state of Arizona, in a small town called Snowflake. When somebody makes a complaint anonymously or in person, or if they get arrested and the government tries to make a deal, hey, we'll let you off easy if you'll give us the name of a couple of drug dealers. Well, they got to come up with some names, folks. They have to come up with some names, or else they're going to jail. So they pull some names out of the air. They might be drug dealers, they might not. But in that small little town, you know what they do? They send a letter to you. They don't even go to your house. They send a letter to you telling you report to the court on such and such a date at such and such a time. And when you walk in, the judge pronounces sentence, they slap the handcuffs on you, and it's all over. And you never got caught doing anything. They never searched your house or found anything. It's all on the word of some squealer. And I'm going to tell you something else that you're not going to like. All of this, every bit of it, happened in Nazi Germany during Hitler's rise to power. And the conditions in this country are the exact same conditions that existed in Germany just prior to the time that Hitler rose to power. And children are being taught in this country now to tell on their parents. Now, I'm not saying that it's okay for parents to do things wrong. But I am saying that it's wrong to teach the children to spy on their parents. You see, that's the same thing that happened in Nazi Germany. I can point out to you a lot of parallels between what's happening here and what happened in Nazi Germany, and I can tell you right now that what is coming is a one-world totalitarian socialist government exactly like Nazi Germany. And you had better wake up, and you had better wake up quick. And you better quit falling for these scams like they played on you with Randy Weaver, and most of you fell right into it. I was hearing the most insane things. out of the mouths of radio personalities and from people who were calling in to radio personalities and in the newspapers and on the television. Most of what I heard was blatant lies. Most of what I saw was people falling for it without doing any checking themselves, without caring whatsoever. Just picked it right up. Randy Weaver was never a member of the white racist group called the Aryan Nation. That is a government fiction designed to discredit him. The labels racist, white racist, anti-Semitic, all of these have been used and used very well to discredit and destroy people in this country. Now, that doesn't mean that everybody who's branded an anti-Semitic or racist or white supremacist does not deserve those titles. Many do. But some don't. And the public is too quick to pick it up and run with that ball. And I'll tell you right now, those labels have been applied to me to try to discredit me, and I am by no means, and have never been, anti-Semitic, racist, white supremacist, or any of those things. My wife is Chinese. I'm part American Indian. My little daughter is half Chinese. She's part American Indian, and part of whatever the mixture of the rest of me happens to be, which I think is English, Scotch, and Irish, but I'm not really sure. And I don't care. I never have. So I know how it feels to open up a magazine and see your name connected with anti-Semitism or with white racism when it's not true. And it makes me furious to see this happening to Randy Weaver. And even if he were, folks, he has a right to believe in whatever he wants to believe in this country. The only time he doesn't have a right is when he starts to exercise that belief to hurt someone else. That's when it has to stop. No one has a right to burn a cross on someone else's yard. Period. But I would say that if someone has a right to burn an American flag in the town square, that somebody probably has a right to burn a cross in the town square, because the Supreme Court has ruled that flag burning is an expression of political statement. So, how can you burn the flag of our country in the square of the town, but if you set up a cross in the square of the town and burn that cross, you can go to jail for a long, long time? Now, I'm not saying I'm in support of cross burning. That's not what this is about. What I'm trying to tell you is we're being lied to. We're being screwed around, and the Constitution's being destroyed right in front of our eyes. American people have forgotten how to think. They've forgotten what their roots are. They've forgotten what the Constitution is. They've forgotten that if they take the rights away from another person, they've also taken the rights away from themselves. They've forgotten that when your city proposes that they have roadblocks to check and see if people are driving while they're intoxicated, that they're actually, by allowing it, giving up their Fourth Amendment rights, which leads to the confiscation of property and things that we're seeing now. And it pains me, because people don't understand what the consequences of this is. If you want to change the law, if you want to change the Constitution, there's a way to do it, folks, but only one way, by amendment. And the only way that it can be done by amendment is exactly the way it's spelled out to do it in the Constitution itself. And no matter whether you like it or not, that's the only way that the law in this country should be changed. You can't arbitrarily say, I don't like this guy, and I'm not going to let him talk because I don't like what he's saying. Because if you do that, then he and his crowd can come over and shut you up because they don't like what you're saying. And whoever's the strongest will rule. I see freedom flying away like a flock of flamingos off of a lake in the Everglades. I see freedom taking wing almost every time I turn around, and it's not going to come back. Freedom is not migratory, folks. It doesn't go away for a little while and then come back. When freedom's gone, it never comes back. Look throughout history and you'll see. You'll see how long man had to struggle to finally be a sovereign king in his own right and have the government as his chattel slave. It never happened until this country was created by our forefathers and wrote the Constitution, the most brilliant document ever penned by the minds of men to ensure that men stayed free. But only if men had a brain and used it and was responsible and was the watchdog of the government. Through apathy, ignorance, and the abdication of responsibility, we are losing our country, we are losing our freedom, we are losing our Constitution. And I'm going to tell you right now, we deserve it. It's time to wake up. It's time to wake up and become responsible. To care again and stop being apathetic. It is time to stop being ignorant and stupid and start using our brains, because the penalty is going to be the same penalty that the people in Europe suffered under Hitler. The blood will flow in the streets. Christians, I believe, are going to be massacred like they've never been massacred before in history. And I think the same thing is going to happen to the Jewish people and anyone else who won't bow down to the New World religion that's just around the corner. And people see incidents like what happened to Randy Weaver, and they don't even think about what really happened to Randy Weaver. They label him a white Aryan nation supremacist, a felon, now, I suggest if you want to know what Randy Weaver believes, that you get in touch with Randy Weaver and ask him, and stop listening to all these people who don't know what he believes, including me, and I'm the only one, who was honest enough to tell you. Freedom is in great danger worldwide at this moment. You had better listen. You'd better begin to think, and you'd better wake up. This New World Order stuff may sound real nice until you really begin to look at it. Until you start looking for a Bill of Rights and you find that there is none. And you start looking for who's going to lead this New World Order, and nobody can tell you. It's time to wake up, folks. It's time to go back to our roots. It's time to rediscover this country. It's time to rediscover the Constitution. It's time to understand that we can no longer be stupid or ignorant. It is time to pinpoint exactly who these people are who are destroying this country and deal with them properly, legally, and lawfully. Because the alternative is to wait until it's too late and then try to deal with it with the force of arms. And I never want to see that happen, because blood will run in the streets of America. So we need to deal with this now, folks, now, right now, while we can, legally, lawfully, while we still have power in our hands. And don't tell me you're just one lonely little human being that there's nothing that you can do, because I will be infuriated if I hear that from you, because I am just one lonely little human being, and there's lots that I can do and am doing and have been doing for years. For years. If you would like to help save the Constitution and the Bill of Rights, save this country and thus save freedom for the world, because if this country falls, folks, freedom will go forever from the entire world. From the entire world. The United States holds the torch of freedom and has since its inception. If you would like to help save the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, this country, and thus freedom for the world, join CAJI, C-A-J-I, CAJI, the Citizens Agency for Joint Intelligence. It is our intelligence network. It is our organization that we hope will become politically powerful. It is our efforts that will count. It is a way to start using that gray matter again. It's a way to get our newsletter. It's a way to have access to our computer bulletin board service. It's a way to have access to me personally. It's a way to get a certificate and an ID card, to have discounts in my lectures and workshops as I travel around this country. This is a charter membership, folks, one time only, $25. It's going to go up. The next time you hear this broadcast, it will be $35, and the time after that, it will be $45, and it will stay at $45 from that point on. This is charter membership. The next time you hear this offer, it will be $35. The time after that, it will be $45. If you would like to join CAJI, the Citizens Agency for Joint Intelligence, become a charter member now. Send your $25 to CAJI, C-A-J-I, in care of the Becker Satellite Network. That's the Becker Satellite Network, Kiowa, spelled K-I-O-W-A, Kansas, 67070. That's $25 to CAJI, C-A-J-I, in care of the Becker Satellite Network, Kiowa, Kansas, 67070. You can also help keep this program on the air by purchasing my book, Behold a Pale Horse. That's Behold a Pale Horse, and the title is from the book of Revelations, but it's not a religious book. It's 500 pages of the most well-documented, most suppressed information that's ever been published in the history of the world. And I've been told that by many, many experts who know. In there, you will see the complete plans for the New World Order. All of a sudden, everything that has shocked you and that has baffled you and that has confused you will come into clear focus, and you will understand what's going on in the world and why. Without this book, you will be crippled in the coming months and years. The book is $24. That includes postage and handling. $24. That includes postage and handling. Send it to the Becker Satellite Network, Kiowa, Kansas, 67070. Ask for Behold a Pale Horse by William Cooper. That's $24. Includes postage and handling to the Becker Satellite Network, Kiowa, Kansas, 67070. Now, I will be speaking in Phoenix, Arizona, September 18th through the 21st. That's Phoenix, Arizona, September 18th through the 21st. For information, call area code 212-685-4080. That's 212-685-4080. I will be speaking in Atlanta, Georgia. I will have a lecture on October the 15th in the evening. That's a Thursday. And I will be giving an all-day workshop on the 18th, which is a Sunday. October 15th and October 18th in Atlanta, Georgia. For information, call 404-986-0802. That's 404-986-0802. Once again, Atlanta, Georgia, October 15th and 18th. Area code 404-986-0802. One more reminder, folks, don't miss this chance to get your charter membership in CAJI, C-A-J-I, the Citizens Agency for Joint Intelligence, for this introductory charter membership offer. Remember, the next time you hear this program, it's going to be $35. $35. And then the program following that one, it will be $45, where it will remain forever. So remember, this is a one-time offer only. Charter membership in CAGI, the Citizens Agency for Joint Intelligence, is $25. Take advantage of this. The newsletter alone is normally $35 for 12 issues. The access to the computer bulletin board system is normally $80 a year or $30 per quarter. This is a tremendous bargain that you're getting. And you can help keep this program on the air, and you can help save the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, this country, and this freedom for the world. Good night, and I mean this from my heart. God bless you all.